Hello, Ryan here, aka Mac, and welcome. We have the Squadron 42 monthly report to delve into, so let's get going. As always, a huge thank you to my patrons and channel members. Thank you guys so much for the support. And if you do enjoy my content, please consider subscribing and helping the channel to grow. So kicking off with AI content, they supported level design by creating a new worker behavior which enables the designers to apply traits to the various AI archetypes, refining which usables they use, such as sitting, leaning, inspecting, and cooking. The team also modified various usables to use the first reaction system, which will allow the NPCs to break out of a usable during animations. For example, if an NPC is typing at a console and they hear a gunshot or see an enemy, they will stop typing and react appropriately. This was completed for the standing and sitting consoles, leaning, seats, stairs, railings, search spots, attack spots, and more, and are now working to improve the visuals. For the AI features team, they continued to work on combat scenarios and improved visual perception by adjusting the field of view form and exposing more information for the designers to tweak, with the aim, they say, to create a stealth combat mechanic from the player's perspective that requires adjustable perception timings and field of view. New functionality was also added to the tactical point system. This will enable it to compute path distances when selecting variable relocation points or cover locations during combat, rather than just direct distance. It'll be very interesting to see just how capable these NPCs are in their various abilities when it comes to actually finding and moving to different covers and of course flanking the player. Finally, NPCs were also set up to use missile turrets. Now for the AI tech team, they improved the Pathfinder system to work with planetary navigation mesh tiles, enabling them to place NPCs on planets and move them from one location to another. They also started the work for generating planet navigation mesh automatically based on the player's proximity. Now this is great news to hear. They are now able to have NPCs on a planet moving from one location to another, and this in my opinion is a major milestone, and let's hope we're not waiting too long to see this in the persistent universe. That is excellent news. Now, one feature the team delivered this month is allowing the player to lead a formation of AI ships, which of course was initially requested for Squadron 42 but should be available in the PU as well in the future, of course. Looking forward to that moment in Squadron 42, but for players in the PU who don't want to have real player crewmates but still need the support, this will obviously be applicable when you're hiring NPCs to act as escorts. Now, improvements were made to the collision avoidance system, including physics optimizations for obstacle queries. Efforts were made to improve AI design paths, and NPCs will follow them, and as these paths can be quite complex with multiple branches, they were updated to allow NPCs to follow them from any starting place. Also, work continued on the subsumption editor. This time it was completing multi-graph view. So moving on to animation, the team progressed with zero-G traversal, Vanduul combat, medical gun self-healing and various story scenes, and the facial animation team finalized animations on the newly improved head models. For level gameplay, the AI team worked on a usable that exists in one of the level environments to give it life, story content, and provide an opportunity for stealth gameplay. And they also helped to create a more tactile feel when interacting with player outfits, and a Vanduul mocap shoot was planned. For the character art team, they continued with their ongoing polish and update passes for the character heads, all of which incorporated the new eye assembly and skin shader. They also updated many of the crew outfits and officer uniforms to elevate them to the current quality level. Finally, they updated their zoos, systemically going through hair, skin and DNA for the entire project. I am very intrigued to see what this new standard for the player heads or the character heads look like. It does sound like they are doing amazing work. Hopefully we'll get to see some of that at CitizenCon perhaps. So moving on to environment art, the team worked on locations for the quarterly milestone, assisting the flight design and cinematics team in bringing spacescapes and internal spaces to life in the game's opening chapter. Elsewhere, focus was on the Archon station and chapters 7, 15 and 9. The cinematics team closed out on the remaining tasks on a significant sequence for the Q2 milestone. This sequence features Cydnus mining ticks, and the team ensured the cutaway properly highlights the animation of the articulated legs to help the related teams properly close out the vehicle. Man, I hope we get to buy these vehicles one day soon. I've loved these Cydnus mining tick things from the very first day I saw them, and we've barely seen anything about them. I just hope they come to the PU because they look super cool. The team also revisited earlier sequences in the game's opening chapter to bring them one step closer to the final delivery. Great to hear final delivery are words being used in Squadron 42's development. Also, they can now animate all the bridge consoles and chairs on the Bengal carrier, which wasn't set up when they last worked on the major sequence in that location, so their most recent pass included proper chair, screen, console, stick and throttle animations alongside the motion captured animations, with the team saying, in tradition with the other sci-fi universes, there are of course no seatbelts on those bridge seats, so when the ship gets hit, we have some nice wiggle and shaking going on. The Bengal's bridge is huge, with the area around the captain alone having 8 seated officers, so the team spent time ensuring the whole area had proper animations and polish. For example, crew members properly looking at events or characters. It is going to be quite a moment seeing these huge ships inside properly. This campaign sounds like it is shaping up to be something very special. The cinematics team also improved the blockout for an escape level, which is in a state where it's safe to polish the various splines throughout the sequence. This also shows the level artists where they can polish and add further meshes or detail. On the character side, a lot of improvement sequences are now in the state where the team can now access how the current hairstyles and costumes look on key actors. And finally, they received a selection of special enemy ships and the ability to animate the M50's cockpit controls, so lifting a related cutaway to the next level. I do wonder if these enemy ships are the Vanduul fleet, as those ships have just recently completed their gold standard pass according to the progress tracker. So, moving on to the engine team, there is a lot to talk about here. Firstly, they progressed with the physical quantum travel. They now have a proper quantum grid, which is per solar system, and a quantum obstacle component that registers any analytical representation of an obstacle, with them saying that they can now make the equivalent of a blind quantum jump and drop out before hitting a moon along the travel path. So let's just quickly readdress this. So they said that they can now make the equivalent of a blind jump. So this could be an indication of CIG intending to allow explorers to be able to blind jump in the verse, but let's not obviously assume that this is the case until they let us know. The use of quantum probes is still the intended direction for exploration, and this could be part of that testing, but you never know what they could achieve later down the line, but it could be a sign of things to come. The team also continued to improve performance, and the destruction of static physical entities now run time spliced, while querying the processing parts of the physical entity during collision detection was improved. The physics system code cleanup continued. For example, the physics world's time step function now makes individual phases of the time step clearer. Not entirely sure what all of this means. If you do know, please drop a comment below. The transition to the Gen12 renderer continued. Shader activation was made thread safe and no longer requires explicit synchronization via locks. Volumetric fog volumes now run natively in Gen12, and the team refactored the use of several reflected shader parameters throughout the render code and shaders. Tint support was also added, as well as scattering query support for forward shaded objects, and several pieces of legacy code across the renderer codebase were cleaned up. In regards to atmosphere and volumetric clouds, time was spent reworking the reprojection and filter chain to ultimately allow ray matching at lower resolutions for improved GPU performance. Improvements were also made to the placement of samples for ray matching, which involved reprojecting results from previous frames, filtering and denoising cloud depth, and then upsampling in scatter and transmittance results to full resolution for various problematic view scenarios. Those scenarios include orbital views, scenes with high depth complexity, and any scene with strong camera movement. This is all still work in progress, they say, though the team hope to roll it out shortly. Finally, for clouds, Work was also submitted to improve cloud shading by better blending between forward and backward scattering inside them, which is important for rendering the silver lining. Moreover, improvements were made to the look of cloud edges to give them a more volumetric feel. The stepping code for local cloud shadow details was reworked to allow more details for the same performance cost. Great to hear about all of this work going on for clouds. I am really excited to see what CIG can achieve in the way of planetary clouds, so hopefully these improvements will roll out with 3.15 or 3.16. We don't know yet, but I'm sure when they do come, it'll be a big improvement, as well as performance improvements, because as we all know, clouds on Orison take a big performance hit, and the difference between very high and medium is very significant in the graphics performance. So hopefully any work they do here will help us to have better looking clouds and have them run better as well. On the core engine side, time was spent optimizing the low-level system. For example, various improvements were made to SIG function, which serves as a vehicle to capture and pass C++ lambdas. The next focus was optimizing the entity and loading stalls plaguing the PU, and as a result, several entity and load bottlenecks were rectified. Furthermore, the management of component events was optimized and code to create and destroy them improved. Work was also done to deliver multiple optimizations in the spatial culling system, which will be used for server meshing, and finally the entity component update scheduler was changed to allow more than one update per component pass to enable more flexible use of components. Very much looking forward to CitizenCon with the server meshing panel. Let's hope that they can show us a proper live working server meshing example. So moving on to gameplay features, the team updated the helmet attachment method across all the scenes in chapters 1 and 16. Further work is still required, but they're pleased to see the helmets beginning to function correctly. I'm really looking forward to when we can have the ability to physically remove or equip our helmets, as well as the various HUD boot-up sequences too. I think it'll be pretty cool seeing all that. Chapter 4b received several updates. A completed scene was completely mirrored, and the team also assisted cinematics with animations for the deck crew during takeoff sequences. The biggest visual update of the month was to a key ship that now has a large animated welding arm on the front, so the team finalized several scenes with characters using and interacting with it. I'm not entirely sure what this ship could be. My initial thought was the Reclaimer, but then that doesn't have a welding arm, it has a cutting tool arm, or a gripper, or a claw. Do let me know what you think this welding arm ship could be. I would love to know what your thoughts are there. For graphics and visual effects programming, last month the graphics team progressed with the render to texture system, which is receiving a mini overhaul to cope with some of the new UI systems that make use of 3D icons, such as the personal inventory. They enabled dynamically rendered textures to be cached to allow them to generate a large number of high-quality, super-sampled images with minimal cost. They also dynamically reduced texture resolution in out-of-focus areas to reallocate more resources to the rest of the game. For Gen 12, the shadow and real-time probe systems were converted, which will soon be activated by default, and streaming of real-time probes was also completed and enabled. They must be almost done now with the Gen 12 work. I can't imagine there's a lot left to do until we start seeing the actual benefits that it provides, and I feel like it might be coming towards the sort of 3.15 mark where we see a lot more improvements to this, or at least performance improvements thanks to the Gen 12, but it could be a little later. Anyway, alongside all of this, they began adding support for refraction into the GPU particle system, matching the functionality of the CPU particle system and surpassing its visual quality. This, they say, marks the end of a long-standing goal to implement counterparts of all legacy mesh and sprite functionality in the new CPU particle system. Quite an achievement there. Very happy to see these goals finally coming to fruition. Finally, for the visual effects team, they continued with the fire hazard system. It now utilizes the new compressed physics render mesh, which obtains accurate surface data without relying on lower resolution and lower accuracy physics proxy meshes. Finally, the way fire spreads through doorways was improved as well. I am very confident that we will see a lot of this fire tech at CitizenCon during the live demo. I just have a feeling it's something that they are pushing to try and complete so that they can show it off, because it is quite impressive tech. Moving on to level design, the space and dogfighting team continued the AI implementation for friendly, neutral and hostile ships. This is an ongoing process alongside the AI feature team, who are still in the process of developing features like Quantum Travel Boost and Scan Pulse. Not sure what either of those are, to be fair. The Scan Pulse just sounds like a ping, but they're using different terminology, so it might be something different. The team also utilized extra resources to focus on the game flow and pacing details in various chapters. And finally, social design continued to implement all in-game scenes for review and sign-off. Now, the narrative team have begun determining what kind of additional documentation is needed for the game's various levels. This included a variety of locations requiring sign and branding updates, along with proposals for the type of NPCs populating the areas. The team also generated scripts for additional narrative vignettes and wildlines that better reflect the current game flow and story moments. And finally, they began initial discussions into their next mocap shoot, which includes completing some of the work which was postponed due to the pandemic. For QA, they continued to provide cinematics with level recordings for review and supported the dev teams by testing changes and investigating issues. Support was also given to the AI team, testing their various implementations throughout the campaign, with video recordings captured and reviewed weekly to ensure that the new behaviours and fixes are in line with the intended direction. QA, as always, doing God's work. So finally, the visual effects team, they focused on a significant space battle scene that features a mixture of cinematics and in-game vehicle destruction, along with various cinematic background sequences. The team are putting several techniques and workflow processes to use that they learned while working on the huge destruction sequence in Theatres of War, which proved to be a valuable testbed for Squadron 42 and the PU. This sequence is, I think, what we saw on Inside Star Citizen with the various space station destructions. These techniques, they say, include combining bespoke offline simulations done in third-party software like Houdini with in-game destruction and particle effects. Work also commenced on the fire propagation sequence that takes place within a key interior location. So that is the end of the Squadron 42 monthly report. There is a huge amount of work going on at the moment for Squadron 42, and it turns out Chris Roberts and his family are already in the UK. Hopefully this is the starting point of them closing out Squadron. There's a lot of stuff coming to completion, which is music to my ears. I really do hope that we get to see a little update on Squadron 42 at CitizenCon, maybe showing off how it currently looks in a complete level, like another vertical slice, but maybe not as long or as in depth to save on the spoilers. But it is great hearing all of the work that's going on here. Obviously, I will be bringing the PU monthly report as well as soon as I've got that written up and put into a video, so do subscribe if you want to check out that one. Also, if you want to talk more about Star Citizen and just hang out with an awesome community, you are all more than welcome over on my Twitch channel. It is twitch.tv/supermacbrothers Hit the like button if you don't mind, it does the channel a huge favour, and tick that notification bell if you would like to be notified when my videos go live. Again, thank you to my patrons and channel members who allow me to make these kinds of videos. Cannot do this without you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.